Okay, I'm going to be painting the eye, starting with this palette arrangement that I have right here. And I'm mixing my highlights down on this end with Naples yellow, my blacks and my darks at the other end. So I got Naples yellow from one highlight. I also have a pink for another highlight, and then I have a pink that I mixed with magenta down below as well, which I'll also use. And I have a mint green mixed up. This is my magenta right here. I have a mint green that I've mixed up that I'll use as a transition color on the eye. And I'll also mix a little darker version of that. I mixed a tiny bit of alizarin crimson into that just to get a little darker, more neutralized, kind of almost a brown green. This is ultramarine blue that is mixed here for my certain values, and then I made a black with alizarin crimson and phthalo green. I put some light in the middle, so I'll be doing a lot of my middle mixing, middle values in the middle, and I'm using Houck Slow Dry as my medium for this. So I start with the gesture, and when I draw the gesture, I like to start with that cast shadow right below the upper eyelid. And I'm putting that in, and it kind of goes in three shapes like so. The outside part will be a little higher than the inside. This is kind of a generic eye. And there's my upper eyelid, putting in the corner of the eye, and as the lower lid comes around, it'll join just under that eyelid, slightly above on the outside. And I'm putting in some areas that I'll have just a few markings for my eyebrow, for the eyebrow. Now on a woman's eye, the brow is going to be higher, appear to be higher, and it'll be deeper set on men, so it won't look as high for most men. Now I like to widen that shadow just below the upper eyelid, and then I put in my pupil. I'm still just getting my gesture. I think of a little bit of spokes going up toward the pupil as I put that in. And I'll just continue to widen that. I'm widening that with, for the most part, with a black mixed with a little bit of red violet. Okay, I'm starting to put in some values now. And I'm just putting in a little bit of that mint green in the inner side of this particular eye. And a little bit of a violet, just a little bit of a light violet on the inside of the eye. Now I'm putting in a darker red violet in that crease, and I'm putting magenta into the corners of the eye, and I'm also putting magenta or alizarin crimson right on the pupil. Then I'm putting in some lights. I'm putting in my light areas, not worrying too much about my values just yet. I'm just getting my values overall in. And I'm putting in some of the pinks on the inside, and I darken that shadow. Now I'm using a blending brush also to blend that shadow soft. So I want to keep everything a little bit soft, and I'll tighten it up as I go. And I'm darkening the outside of the iris, and I'm putting some mint green into the eye, and I'm also putting a little bit of ultramarine into the eye. And I'm putting in my highlights, or lighter areas, and there's a little bit of a highlight area inside the eye itself. That's ultramarine that I'm going over and darkening in there. So the white of the eye is not white. It has ultramarine, some of the mint green, and then magenta in the corners. Putting in the brown, I think in hairs I just scratch in some of the light for the brow. Okay, now here I've softened some of the values I've already put in. That's the soft on that crease kind of between the orbital muscle and your upper eyelid, putting in some light on it. I'm just going to drag it in there to get my light onto the edge of the eye, and I will soften that edge as I go. I don't want to leave any edge rock hard. That's a blending brush, and I'm softening that edge. I'm going partway over the edge of the light, and I'm just softening it in there. And I'm softening into the shadow itself, so it's not quite as prevalent as it was. And I'm putting a little extra highlight right there in that area there. And I paint the eye before I put on my eyelashes, or the person's eyelashes. And I just drag and soften that against the shadow again. And I'm going to restate some of these shadows in just a minute, now that I'm kind of getting the values that I want. So remember, the white of the eye is not white. You want to get some of these colors subtly into that eye. The lightest part of the eye, the white of the eye, is pretty much a Naples yellow with a little bit of just a drop of the mint green in it. Okay, now I've darkened my shadow below the eyelid, and I'm putting in some light right next to the pupil. You can see it's just a hint of the red still showing on the outside of the pupil. And I'll just drag that toward the outside of the iris. Just kind of drag it toward the outside of the iris. And if you touch a little bit of the red, just kind of clean it up. I'm just kind of scooting it back in. And it's okay to leave a little bit of hazy or fuzziness where the red meets the light. It's kind of a natural thing that happens. Now I'm softening those edges again, and I'm going to go back and put in some more light after I've blended that a little bit. And when I do this, I don't want to overblend the top part. I want to leave pretty clear, just like pretty strong, just like I have. And then I'm going to blend back into it from the underneath area. Here I got a little bit of the red in there, so I'm going to blend that in for a moment, and then I'm going to take it out. Okay, put a little bit more in. Each time I have to wipe my brush off, otherwise I'm going to drag some of that paint, if it's wet still, drag it into other parts. This is good to work wet into wet. So this is a good way to do it. Now you may have to do it a couple of times if you got a few areas that may have spilled over, like the red is doing right here. Now I'm pulling from the dark edge back into that light area, and it's going to lighten up as it approaches the light and look a little more natural. And I still think of the spoke-like shapes that I want to get in here. Darken the darker part of the eye up above so it looks natural in the shadow. Okay, we're getting there. Put some light back in. I got a red spot I still need to clean up. Okay, each time I give it a swipe, I wipe my brush off and put fresh paint on. Okay, now I'm using a blending brush. I'm blending into that darker color just slightly so it starts to change value right on the edge. I'm using a real small, dry brush, nothing on it. So I blend that in there just a little bit light. You'll see each time I start to do this, that red will start to be more subdued. And bring my pupil down a little bit further. Okay, getting there. Now you can still soften edges as you go here. And pull some of that kind of a lightish blue-green almost up into the light. Now I'm flicking it up into toward the lighter area of the iris. Tighten up this outer part of the iris. You can see I still have the magenta pretty strong in the corners. Okay, now I've softened that a little bit on the eye, and I'm going to put in some eyelashes. I like to start with just the magenta, and then I'll go over that with some darker, maybe a black or a deep violet or even a brownish color. But I'll go back over that so that little hints of that red will show through. And that looks kind of natural. And then I'll soften this too. These are like little bottom lashes. Sometimes I leave the bottom lashes out altogether. They just tend to look a little too strong sometimes. Okay, and I'm going to flick in some dark now into the bottom of this, and it'll start to look a little bit more natural, like natural eyelash. Sometimes these eyelashes, you just have to look at the direction of the eye to see the direction of the lashes. I'm going back over some of that and just softening it down below. I don't want to get too dark down below. If I get too dark, then I call that the Johnny Depp effect. Okay, I'm going to put in my highlight. And sometimes the highlight will go down and you don't want to touch it. Just leave it like there. Now there I went a little bit too wide, so I got to put a little more on. Each time you put it on, if your paint's still wet, you just have to wipe your brush off every time. So now I'll kind of clean that up. And sometimes you can just kind of bump the edge of it and it'll look like it's changing a value slightly. And that looks very natural when you do that. Yeah, that highlight needs to be strong. It's going to go right up against the bottom of the cast shadow under the upper eyelid if the light's shining from above. I'm going to put in a little highlight in the corner of the eye, and I'm going to put what I call a juicy. Okay, there is a lot of light, a lot of water that is always on the eye, and that's why we get these reflected highlights, actually, because of the moisture that's in our eye. Otherwise we couldn't close our eye. Now I'm going to flare that out a little bit in one direction here and the other with a little bit of magenta on my brush, so that it changes a little value on a little bit of a lighter pink color and value on it as it goes into that away from the light. And I'll just touch up the eye a little bit, a little bit strong there on the edge. Okay. Okay, having a little bit of that reddish color at the bottom of the eye sometimes is kind of nice, so that the eye does not flatten out too much. And inside the eye, the white of the eye, again, I've got mint green mixed with a little bit of ultramarine blue. And this is pretty much where I'm going to go here. I'm going to just touch up some areas now. Get a little more light back into the iris. And if you place it, I'm always thinking of the direction of spokes as it's going out, okay? And here I am. I'm nearing completion now. I'm just going to put touch-ups in here. Still thinking the spoke direction for the most part. I've got a little fine-tuning to do. This is always what I call, in the final phases, I call this tweaking, final tweaking. So that's all I'm doing, getting my lights in, blending some edges. And there's a little lighter at the top of the eye, right underneath the eyelid, and right underneath that shadow. Okay, and I'm just cleaning up that shadow a little bit. And putting a little more light just above that. And sometimes you can pull that light back in to the eye, and that'll look nice and natural. Okay, I want to get that little light to go up against the bottom of that lid, so that it's almost a slight cast shadow right in there. So we'll go up against it. Okay, now I'm pulling some of that light back into those eyelashes just a tiny bit. I'm just about done. Got a few things. I'm just doing the eyeball and a little of the area around it. So that's just about it.